One of the biggest illusions men fall into is believing that a woman's departure is the collapse of their entire world. We've been conditioned to think that her staying equals your worth, that her approval is the fuel you run on. But here's the blunt reality. If she had the ability to leave, she was never truly yours in the first place. Love that disappears the moment difficulty shows up isn't love at all. It's convenience dressed as affection. When a woman chooses to walk out, it doesn't signal the end of your story. It simply marks the closing of her chapter in it. She was never meant to be the whole book, brother. Only a few pages. You're the one holding the pen. Too many men shatter themselves trying to hold on to someone who left long before she physically stepped away. Because her exit doesn't happen the day she walks out. It happens months earlier, when her heart was already elsewhere. Once you understand that truth, her leaving no longer feels like devastation. It feels like release. Here's the hidden truth most men miss. You're not actually afraid of losing her. You're afraid of losing the validation her presence once gave you. And so when you mourn, it's not really her you're grieving. It's the sense of worth you borrowed from her while she was around. That quick glance, that small gesture of approval, that sense of being chosen, that's what most men cling to. But once a man truly evolves, he realizes that this validation is nothing more than a fragile chain loosely wrapped around his neck. If she can withdraw it and you crumble, you were never standing on your own. You were leaning on her the entire time. The moment you stop depending on that external nod is the moment you become unshakable. A woman cannot destroy a man who has built his worth from within. That's why her departure should never be what you fear. The real danger is never learning to stand tall without her presence. Here's the paradox. The less you obsess over whether she stays or goes, the less likely she is to leave. Women gravitate toward the man who doesn't flinch at the possibility of loss. Why? Because that calm detachment radiates strength. It communicates, I want you, but I don't need you. You add to my life, but you're not my lifeline. And that subtle difference is magnetic. Most men smother women by holding too tightly, constantly proving love, showcasing need, begging for reassurance. But the man who knows he can survive, even thrive, if she walks away, never has to beg. His grounded presence alone makes her pause and wonder, what is it about him that makes him so steady, so untouchable? And that's when she holds on tighter. Not because you demanded it, but because your strength leaves her no choice. Still, never forget this truth. Her leaving isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about her own battles, her own insecurities, her own unfinished story. And when you understand that, you stop taking departure as proof of your inadequacy and start seeing it for what it really is, a redirection. Women move through emotions the way nature shifts through seasons. One day, you're the warmth of spring. The next, she longs for the frost of winter, for novelty, for distraction, for something undefined. If she walks away, it doesn't always mean you failed. More often, it means her feelings changed and she chose to drift with them. But here's where men sabotage themselves. They try to explain it with logic. What did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? Brother, you can't bargain with the seasons. You can't command the ocean to stop moving. A woman's exit usually says less about your value and more about her inability to ground herself. Don't treat her leaving as proof that you lacked something. See it for what it is. You were steady, and she was unsettled. The moment you stop fearing abandonment, you reclaim your power. Fear is the real prison. It makes you a slave to her decisions. Freedom is found when you realize that your peace comes from you alone. If she goes, you won't shatter. If she goes, your mission continues. If she goes, your worth doesn't shrink. You're still the man who built his life brick by brick, discipline by discipline. And every piece of your foundation holds more weight than her fleeting attention ever could. Once you embrace this, the illusion of her power dissolves. She's not the air you breathe, not the blood in your veins, not the force keeping you alive. She's simply a traveler passing through your story. And men who grasp this truth never need to plead, never need to beg, because they know their empire stands, with or without her. They see the door close, and instead of turning back, they keep walking forward. What most men fail to grasp is that when a woman walks away, it isn't a sentence passed against you. It's a revelation about her. That moment strips away the disguise. The mask slips, and the reality stands exposed. Her loyalty was tied to convenience. Her presence was dependent on conditions. Her affection came with an expiration date. While many men collapse under that realization, the wise man views it as liberation. Why? Because the sooner her true nature is revealed, the sooner you stop wasting your strength on a vessel that could never hold you. Mourning her departure is like grieving over a dream that never existed. She was never the flawless story you imagined. She was simply human, flawed, fragile, and her willingness to walk away revealed more about her character than her words ever could. That truth, brother, is not a curse. It's freedom disguised as loss. Society will keep telling you to fight for her, prove your love, never let her slip away. But here's the code men of strength understand. If she's capable of leaving, then let her. To battle for someone who doesn't want to remain is to drain yourself of dignity. Every time you plead, every time you chase, every time you try to persuade, you erode your own worth in her eyes. You transform from a man into a servant of her shifting desires. And a woman may use a servant, but she cannot truly love one. That's why the men who remain unshaken, who let her walk out with calm eyes and a steady soul, are the ones who are never forgotten. Long after she's gone, their presence lingers, their strength echoes. Because when you stop trembling at the thought of her leaving, you begin reclaiming the very thing that defines a man, his dignity. And dignity, brother, is priceless, worth more than any fleeting affection could ever be. Love is not ownership, and it is not control. If she chooses to walk away, she will. If she decides to remain, she will. Your worrying won't rewrite her choice. Your sleepless nights, your pleading words, your panic, none of it alters the outcome. All it does is drain the very strength you need for yourself. But when you stop wrestling with her will, when you step back and allow her to choose freely, you reclaim your own power. You declare with your presence alone, I do not fear your absence. And that single truth, brother, carries a force most men never even touch in their lifetime. Because the moment you understand that you cannot lose what is truly yours, you stop clutching at things that were never meant to stay. And that shift in perspective is not weakness, it's freedom. It's not just peace, it is strength, the kind of strength that makes a man unshakable. Think carefully. The strongest men the world has ever known were never measured by who clung to them or who walked away. They were remembered for what they built, for what they conquered, for what they left etched into history. No king is remembered for the woman who left his side, but for the kingdom he raised. No warrior was ever immortalized for the heartbreak that tore at him, but for the battles he endured and the victories he claimed. Yet, today's men are deceived into tying their entire identity to whether a woman stays or goes. This is the sickness of modern love, the belief that your existence is dependent on her approval. You must strip that poison from your veins. Your worth was never hers to grant or to take away. She did not forge your discipline. She did not carve out your vision. She did not fuel your hunger. She did not lay the bricks of your empire. Everything that makes you a man, your resilience, your ambition, your unyielding will, was born from you. Not her. Never her. So why should her absence suddenly strip you of what you already are? If anything, it should ignite you further. Let her leaving be the fire beneath your stride, not the shackles around your neck. That's the paradox men rarely understand. The moment you stop fearing her departure, something inside her shifts. She feels it. She sees it. She recognizes that you no longer revolve around her gravity. You've become your own sun. And that unsettles her. Because most women are used to men trembling at the thought of losing them, scrambling to prove their worth, bending until they break just to prevent her from walking away. But when you stand calm, unshaken, and move forward as if nothing shattered, it creates an undeniable tension. She begins to ask herself, why doesn't he need me? Why isn't he pleading? Why does he appear stronger without me than with me? And often, that's when she comes crawling back. Not because you begged, not because you schemed, but because your indifference reveals a truth she cannot swallow, that you are complete without her. That is the hidden power of not worrying. It flips the script entirely. The tragedy is that most men collapse when a woman leaves, not because of love, but because they tied their entire sense of worth to her attention, her affection, her validation. When she walks away, it feels as if she's carrying their soul in her hands. But here's the brutal truth. If she had the power to take everything from you, you never had power at all. A man's strength is not borrowed from a woman's gaze. His stability is not built on her presence. Your peace must remain intact whether she stays or walks. If she stays, you are grounded. If she leaves, you are grounded. That's when you reach the unshakable state, when your life orbits not around her, but around your mission. And here's the part most men never recognize. Worrying about her leaving is often the very trap she unconsciously lays. Women test men not only with words, but with the fears they stir within them. If you live haunted by the idea of her departure, she feels it in your energy, hears it in your tone, senses it in your touch. And ironically, it's that desperation that drives her away. The men who lose women fastest are those who clutch the hardest. Why? Because clinging suffocates. It smothers her. It transforms you into a man she cannot admire. But the man who calmly says, "Go if you must. I will remain," he becomes unforgettable. He changes the dynamic by refusing to play the game of fear. Understand this. Women are drawn to men who radiate abundance. And abundance doesn't mean juggling 10 women. Abundance means living in such a way that loss cannot shake you. It means you have direction, you have purpose, you have a life that continues at full speed regardless of who comes or goes. That is what makes a man magnetic. Because a man who embodies abundance doesn't chase, doesn't cling, he chooses. Women don't want a man who clings, they want a man who chooses. And choice only comes from strength, not fear. When you live in a way that proves her presence is not your lifeline, she begins to see you as rare. Why? Because most men collapse under the weight of distance. But you, if you expand instead of shrink, you make her question everything. You make her realize walking away from you could be the costliest mistake of her life. Think about the men you respect, the calm, steady ones who carry themselves like storms don't touch them. Do you picture them lying awake at night, broken over whether a woman might leave? Of course not. They're too consumed with building, conquering, creating. That's why women stay drawn to them. Not because they beg for attention, but because they never beg at all. Every ounce of energy spent worrying about her departure is wasted on what you can't control. Redirect that fuel into sharpening yourself, and you'll find the fear dissolves on its own. Because when your life grows bigger than her, she only has two options: rise to meet your standard, or fade into the background of your journey. That's the position every man should stand in, not anxiously asking, will she stay, but calmly deciding, is she worthy of staying? Here's the unpolished truth. If she leaves, she was never yours in the first place. Loyalty isn't tested when things are smooth. It's tested when storms hit. If she walks at the first crack of thunder, she was never a partner, only a convenience. And you don't grieve convenience. You outgrow it. You replace it. You level up. The man who stops fearing her exit understands something deeper. Loss isn't loss, it's revelation. It's the stripping away of illusion. It's her true values, her real limits, her actual nature being revealed. And once you see it clearly, you realize she was never the one you imagined. That's when it hits you. All that worry was wasted breath. Most men fear being left because, deep down, they don't actually believe they deserve more. They cling to one woman like she's their last chance at love, convinced she's the highest they'll ever reach. That's scarcity thinking, and it poisons everything. It's why they put up with disrespect. It's why they excuse red flags. It's why they bend their standards just to keep her close. But here's the truth. Once you understand your value is fixed, untouchable, unshaken, her opinion no longer controls you. Your worth doesn't shrink because she refuses to see it. That blindness belongs to her, not to you. Brother, the fear of her leaving is only a reflection of your craving for control. You want her loyalty locked in, her feelings guaranteed, her every move predictable. But love doesn't work under chains. The tighter you try to hold it, the faster it slips away. When you stop trying to control her, you gain something far greater, mastery over yourself. You set the terms. You decide the price of disrespect. You choose who earns a place in your life. From that frame, you no longer beg for her to stay. You evaluate if she even deserves to. And that shift alone changes everything. She feels it. She knows it. When you spend your life worrying about her walking away, you hand her the keys to your peace and say, "Take me wherever you want." That's not strength. That's servitude wrapped in romance. A man's identity should never be built on whether one woman decides to stay or go. Because women are emotional by nature. Their feelings can shift with a single argument, a passing mood, or even another man's glance. If your stability is built on that constant change, you're building on sand. But when your foundation is purpose, discipline, and self-respect, no storm can bring you down. She may leave, but she cannot break you. That's the mark of a man. Think about it. When a woman senses that you're terrified of losing her, she holds the upper hand. She knows that by pulling away, withholding affection, or hinting at leaving, she can bend you to her will. You'll plead, you'll bargain, you'll lower yourself, and in that very moment, her respect for you begins to wither. The strongest men refuse to enter this trap. They don't need to declare it. Their actions make it obvious. They will not be prisoners of a woman's uncertainty. And ironically, this very freedom makes women cling tighter. Because nothing unsettles a woman more than realizing she can walk away, and you'll remain completely unshaken. That indifference both unnerves her and pulls her closer. Here lies the paradox. The less you fear her leaving, the less she even thinks about leaving. When you're not desperate for reassurance, when you're not fixated on every mood shift, when you live as if you'll thrive regardless, she feels the weight of your presence. She sees you are not a man of scarcity. She understands your life has meaning whether she's in it or not. And suddenly, it is she who carries the fear of loss. That is where a man gains ground, not by begging, but by becoming the kind of man who doesn't flinch if she walks away. When this mindset becomes your reality, everything about your energy shifts. You no longer radiate neediness or insecurity. Instead, you exude calm, certainty, and grounded confidence, the kind of force women find magnetic but can't fully explain. She feels safe in your steadiness, yet restless because she knows she cannot control you. That tension, safety entwined with unpredictability, is what keeps her invested. And it only exists when you detach your worth from her presence. You already know who you are. You know what you bring. And you know that, regardless of her choices, life continues to move in your favor. Women are ruled by emotion, desire, doubt, excitement, and boredom cycle endlessly. If you tie your identity to those shifts, you'll be carried along like a leaf tossed in the wind. But if you anchor yourself in mission, discipline, and vision, you become immovable. You watch her emotional storms rise and pass, but you remain rooted. That is masculine presence at its core, unshaken by her volatility, steady in your own gravity. When she realizes her actions cannot shake your foundation, she knows one thing with certainty: you cannot be replaced. And that recognition carries far more weight than any declaration you could ever make. Brother, remember this. When a woman leaves, she takes nothing from you. She simply steps out of a space she was fortunate to enter in the first place. You don't lose value when she exits, you reveal it. Because only a man strong enough to detach, to walk forward without bitterness or collapse, truly understands his worth. Women feel this in their bones, even if they can't put it into words.